Alright, hey class. We are going to work on serial pieces today. I'm going to start out with Photoshop and finish with Photoshop. So open Photoshop up. Alright. From there, I'm going to open up the mockup that I provided for you, just so when I get my serial piece done, I can pull it into and see if I can fit it into this bolt. So I'm going to open that up. And then after I have this open up, I'm going to go ahead and hit File, File New. Okay. You can hit Command N to make a new document as well. All the same. In that new document panel, I want to go ahead and rename this to Serial. I'm going to name it Puff since that's what I'm going to make. I'm going to double check and make sure that I will see inches instead of pixels on the size. Always important to double check, make sure that you're right on the right measurement. I always default to inches, so it's more comparable to everything. So I'm going to work with a square 2 by 2, super important as well, 300 resolution. If you do not change that, you will have a fairly low quality piece. The lower the number, the lower the quality and the resolution. So make sure you change that. Color mode, let's work with RGB. That makes sense. It's its native color mode. So make sure that that is adjusted as well. Once I have everything set up here, I want to hit Create, and you should see a blank square. That's good. I'm going to start off by making a new layer. Layers panel, bottom right. I'll just go ahead and hit New, and it should reveal a blank layer labeled Layer 1. I'm going to double click on that layer, rename it Serial Puff. Makes sense. Serial Puff is what I'm making. That's what I'll name it. From there, I want to make sure that my panels here are set up in a way that it's easy to bounce back and forth between three things. Properties, layers, and 3D. If you do not see any of those three, you can always go through a window up in your menu bar and make sure those are selected. If you see a check mark, it is open. Okay. You can see that 3D isn't available here, so if I select it here, you should see it pop up over here. Yours may pop up differently based on how much room you have and where it sets it up by preset or by default. I think it initially sets it up like this, but I prefer to drag this 3D panel or window over and make it a little icon button and a bar. That way it can expose it over here, thus revealing all three that I'm going to interact with. So there's that. The serial puff layer, going back to the layer panel, I'm going to go up to Edit, Fill, and I'm going to take that floating window labeled Fill, change the contents from the default foreground color to color, and I'm going to mess around with the color picker tool here, or window. Anything other than pure white or pure black will work in this instance, and eventually we're going to change the color entirely, so it doesn't matter all too much. I just like to change the color so you can initially see what happens with the form that we're going to create. So find a color, whatever's previewed in this new area will be created. All you have to do is hit OK twice there, and it should reveal your color here. Once you have your layer full of color, we're going to go to our 3D panel here. By default, 3D postcard is selected. What you want to do is go to Mesh from Preset if you're trying to make a form. Now, if you're trying to make a flake of some sort, you can use 3D extrusion, and it will take whatever is on a layer and extrude it. If you want to see that, we'll do that at another time. If you want to experiment a little bit, go for it. You're not going to hurt anything. So, but for this one, I'm going to make a puff. That's the most popular, or it tends to be. So to do that, I want to select Mesh from Preset. Change, I think the default is cone. Change that to sphere, and then hit Create. You're going to see some weird things happen initially. First off, if you've never used the 3D window or anything interacting with 3D, you're going to get a window that says, hey, you're using 3D? Are you sure you want to do that? Of course you do. You clicked on it, hit OK, and then you're also going to have a dimension preview here saying, hey, we have this cool thing if you have the RAM to process it. We don't. We're just going to hit close and interact with 3D right into Photoshop. So you should be able to see your sphere created, and by default scene is selected in that 3D panel, and we can look at a few things while we're here. When we select scene, you should see the properties up top here. It all relates to scene. Okay? If you hit current view, you should see properties change. You hit sphere, again, properties change. So everything that you interact with via the 3D panel and the layers panel, your properties will change. Everything has its own properties. So just keep that in mind. That's why it's important to be able to see your properties up here, because we're going to interact with it quite a bit. Okay. What we're going to do initially is just go ahead and click on sphere, and we're going to get rid of catch shadows and cast. And that's just a baseline there. We're going to get rid of the shadows. We could spend a lot of time with the material adjustments. We'll spend a little bit of time. And we could also adjust the infinite light, or where the light source is coming from. And that could change for every piece, but that would be really crazy. We're going to keep the infinite light just as it is. And we're going to adjust the textures of the sphere material, but not necessarily the lighting or the value applied to the surface of that form. So long story short, just click on sphere material, go up to your properties panel, okay, and we're going to change the texture. So this is very basic texture mapping. Of course, we're just using presets, but we're still getting experience in that field, and that's always a plus. So when you drop down this preset selection here, you can see a whole slew of things ranging from matte finishes to ornament looking ones to glass or glossy ones, checkered, grass even, brick, so on and so forth. The three common ones are this yellow looking sponge one, okay, and then the other two are all the way down at the bottom. This is the marble looking one. I can't remember the name currently. If I hover long enough it will reveal it. And then the wood cork one is also popular. I'm going to stick with the wood cork. Again, that's, I would say, the most popular. Just has a good vibe to a piece of cereal per se. And then from there, I'm just going to collapse that drop-down window, and staying in that properties panel, just to the right of diffuse, there should be a little icon. If you click on that icon and hit edit texture, you should see a new tab open up. Fancy name there, .psb, right? So this is a document within a document essentially, and whatever we do here, it will automatically reveal on our serial piece. By default, in our properties, the UV overlays is selected or turned on most often. If you hide that, you'll be able to see what is going on here, and you want to, so that's what you're adjusting. Again, anything that we do here will automatically change here. It's up to you entirely what you do. We're going to start off basic and just look at the layers of this texture to adjust it. So if we go to our gradient map, I'm going to select that, highlight it, and then go up to our properties, click on the bar, the gradient bar there, and just change the gradient. Okay, it may not look exactly as what you think it would be, but remember, it's taking a gradient and interacting with other things. Okay, and that's what is being revealed. You can use a preset here if you want, or you can make your own. It's entirely up to you. I'll show you real quick on how to make your own if you want. Just below the presets, you have this other area in the bottom half. It's a very long bar of color. Below that bar, you have little tiny squares. Those are called stops. And just above that, you have stops as well. The ones below the gradient bar involve changing the colors of the gradients. Okay, so I can click on that little stop, click on color, change it to whatever I want, hit OK, and you can see that it changes it here. You can have as little as 2 colors here, or if you see this icon change here to the finger, you can add more stops as well. If you have too many, you can always select hit delete on your keyboard, it'll go away. So it's all up to you on what you want this to look like. Okay. Once you have one that you like, let's just change this one up real quick so I have a new one. Once you have something that you like, if you like it, you can change the name up in the custom or the name area. I could type, there we go. Hit new, and it'll automatically make a preset for you, which is pretty cool. Once I hit OK, what I want to do is go back to my serial piece up in the tab area, and it should automatically change. In this case it did. That's good. That's what we want. From here we're going to mess around with our layers a little bit and see if we can make a cluster of serial. So if I collapse this area here that gives us a description of what's on the layer to give ourselves more room, we can do that just by hitting that little arrow to the right of the layer. And then what I want to do is just go to my keyboard, hit Command J, and that should, it may take a second, but it should automatically duplicate the layer that you had selected and place it on top of that layer. So we should be able to see serial puff copy here, which is good. From here, we want to make this copied layer rasterize. So it's no longer going to be 3D, it's just going to be a flat layer. So if I right click in this open area of the layer, go to rasterize. It's super important that we hit rasterize and not render. Two completely different things. Rasterizing will take, it will go fairly quick. Rendering will take forever and a day. If you accidentally hit render, just let it sit. Fully render, it may take 3 to 5, 10 minutes, whatever it is. Let it sit and then come back to it when it's finished. Okay. So make sure that we hit rasterize and make your life easier. Okay. And what we should see here, now we have a copy that's normal, and then we have a serial puff that has that 3D icon indicating that's a 3D layer. Okay, what I'm going to do is just hide the copied one by hitting that little eyeball and then selecting the serial puff layer. Okay, we are going to go back into this layer, and again we're making a cluster of serial that's fairly randomized. So I'm going to always go back to that serial puff layer, rotate that serial piece a little bit, and if it does not rotate for you, make sure that you're selected on the right layer, and it should work. Okay, it can be kind of finicky, and if it doesn't work, you may have changed a setting somewhere. It's not the end of the world, we can figure it out. You should get this little icon just like this. Click and drag, rotate, change the look. Okay. Once you have a different look, we're going to do the same as before. Command J, that will duplicate the layer. Then right click in the open area and rasterize. Okay. So now if I go back to my copy layer, move it up, my serial puff copy 2, move it over, I have two different looking serials. Okay. So again, I'm going to repeat that process until I have a nice cluster of serial. Let's change that one there. Command J. Right click on the copied version, make it, or rasterize that to make it a flat object. And I'm going to call that good, just so you're not watching paint dry per se. Make this little tiny cluster. Okay. Go to my layers, and I'm going to hold down Shift, select multiple layers at once. So click on the top, holding Shift, click on the bottom, all just the copied layers. I'm going to leave my serial puff layer alone. From there, we'll hit Command T, so this is easier to see. Okay, if you have not updated, you will have to hold Shift to scale and keep proportion. If you have updated, you can just grab a corner and it will automatically keep the proportions the same for you. Nice update from Adobe there. Once we have it scaled down, I'm just going to quickly show you how you can move these guys around and just again make a cluster. So my goal is to take these guys here. I'm going to hold down Option, click and drag on one, hit Command T to rotate, and I'm just going to make this fairly randomized. It's not going to be perfect by any means, but it's a good baseline understanding of how you can manipulate layers and make something fairly random. Quickly duplicating again by holding Option. You can see that I'm moving layers around in my panel just by clicking and dragging. Command T is my friend to transform. Let's do one more. We'll take this one. Rotate. Sure. Put it up here. Drag it down. Maybe hide it. There we go. So I have a whole slew of layers here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Let's make one more. Command T. Decent cluster there. I'm going to then make sure I'm on my Move tool. Click and drag. Select all these. And you can see that they're highlighted here. Serial Puff 3D layer still hidden. I might want that in the future, so I'm going to leave it alone. Once these are all selected, I'm going to go down and click on this little folder. That will group them all together. Let's call it cluster. So again, double click there. You can rename it if you want. You know me, I like to stay organized as much as possible, so I'll rename that cluster. From here, I'm going to leave the cluster grouped, but I'm also going to click and drag that cluster to make a new one. Just go down to that new icon and it will duplicate that cluster. So now I have one that's original, all individual layers. If I want to read or change that cluster up, and then this cluster copy off to the right in the open area, I'm going to merge that one. So now I have a cluster, which is what I want. And then from here, I'm just going to hit Command S to save this. Put it in a safe spot and you know where it's at. Okay, now I have a cluster. From there, I want to take this cluster, hold on to it, click and drag, and this is where we're going to go back to our cereal box mockup. I'm going to take that cluster, drag it up into the tab, drop it down, hold on for a second, and then release, and it should automatically show up on this layer. So this is where it's beneficial to maintain this original serial puff and a cluster. If you try to do a lot of 3D stuff on this really big document, it's going to bog things down, right? So that's why I did it in a separate layer. It makes life easier and it makes it perform a little more operable. So from here, I don't really need the puff anymore. If you want to go back into this and adjust colors or anything like that, you have it, right? And which is good. But I'm going to close out of it for now since I don't really need it. I'll close out of both of these. Yeah, I'll go ahead and not save that one. It doesn't matter. Go back to the mockup, and now this is where it gets kind of tricky. I want to slow down there. I want to do a few things here. Going to my layers panel, I've separated mine to where the base is on its own layer, and then I made just a bright green background so you could see that fairly easy. The background layer, green BG background, I'm going to lock that one so I don't move it around, and also the base I'm going to lock that. Okay, so there's that. I found a free-to-use cereal bowl on the internet. I can use that. It's a nice high-res cereal bowl. I cut it out using the magic wand tool, so I just took out the background, leaving just the bowl. Now I need to go into my layers here, and again, these are stackable, right? So what we're seeing is that the green background's at the bottom. The cluster, you can see, is actually below the bowl, so the bowl is actually covering up the cereal. I want to take that cluster, move it above the bowl, and it's going to reveal on top. And then the mock-up base, of course, is here. Now, cereal likes to trick us a little bit when it's presented on a box. It's usually larger than it actually is in the box itself. It's to entice the potential purchaser to, well, buy the cereal, make it look more interesting. So there's that. We're going to kind of follow that same suit. I'm going to make the cereal bowl nice and big. Now it's your choice on how or what size you want to use for your cereal bowl. Again, I'm trying to get somebody to buy this thing, so I'm going to overscale per se, to make it more interesting. So I'm going to take the serial cluster here, right, and I'm just going to hold Option to duplicate, hit Command T to rotate, and I'm just going to make a cluster of serial. Again, kind of that same process from before. My goal is to make it fairly randomized. Now these are all the same color. Could you change all the colors up? Absolutely. Make it fit your theme, your idea. And it's up to you on how much you put onto this too. For me, I'm going to be more interested in a heaping bowl of cereal rather than just a few pieces. But you be the judge and decide what works best for you. So some of this looks fairly repetitive. I could change it up a little bit, but for time's sake, mine and yours, I'm just going to leave it as is, and I'm just going to try to move this in a way to where it's not overhanging the edge of the cereal bowl too much. There we go. That should work. Something like that. Going back to the layers here, all these clusters, I'm going to hold Shift and group all these together. So again, click, hold Shift, and drag that into the folder down the bottom. It'll make it a group, cluster group. So I can always go back and adjust this if I want. I'm going to do that again, and I'm going to make a duplicate of that cluster. But the cluster, just as before when we were making the original pieces, I'm going to merge these together by right-clicking, hitting merge. So now, if I hide this layer real quick, it's all together. I can move it, it moves all together, and I still have the originals if I want to change it. I always like to build in kind of a fail-safe in case something goes awry or I don't like it. I don't have to start from scratch. I just have the original built in with the layer. So there that is. From here, my goal is to figure out how to make it fit into this bowl. So I could go in, zoom in quite a bit, and I could take on the daunting task of taking the eraser, right, and trying to erase this to make it fit. But as we all know, we're human, we make mistakes, and we can accidentally move our mouse or our trackpad or our fingers on our trackpad too much, and it will result in having to start over. So what I'm going to do is try a few tricks using selection tools here. I'm going to start off by taking my copy of clusters or cereal and hide it so I can see the inside of my bowl. Now this is all going to work differently based on the bowl that you find, the color of the bowl, all that. So we're going to look at a few options here and what we can try to do. We can try our magic wand tool, see if it will select the inside of the cereal bowl. And of course we have to be on the right layer here. So if I click on cereal bowl, click on that inside area, this does a really good job. So if I zoom in, those dancing lines are previewing what's going to be selected, right? Looks like it's doing pretty good. Other tools that you can try to use, you can use your ellipse marquee tool. Click and drag, try to follow the edge of the cereal bowl. Okay, you could do something like that. Command T, make that go away. You can also use your quick selection tool, click and drag. It'll also do a decent job. So depending on what you find will also depend on what tool will work best. Trial by fire, try a few of them, see what works best. In this case, the magic wand works really well. So I'm going to click on the inside there. And again, those dancing lines are there. Okay. So once that area is selected, what I'm going to do is go back to my layers panel and just click on cluster group. All right. What this is telling you is that my cluster group is selected, and then I have this selected area on that layer. So selection tools aren't native to just one layer. The selection tool works on based what layer you have selected. So just keep that in mind. If you want to edit your cluster, you have to make sure that layer is selected. Okay, and that's what you're seeing here. So if I just quickly hit delete, the inside goes away. That's not what I want, right? This looks extremely weird and not fitting to what we're trying to do. So if I hit Command Z, okay, I want to get rid of that, or step back, I should say. What I'm going to try here is select the opposite of what that area is selected. So it sounds really weird, but there's shortcuts for everything in Photoshop. If I hit Command Shift I on my keyboard, what will happen is it will select everything other than this area. So if I go in and just hit delete now, you should see everything around that ellipse go away. Which, it's closer, but it's definitely not what we want, because it looks as if it's cropped, right, or maxed off. And we should see this nice big pile of cereal. So again, I'm going to step back. Okay, I'm getting closer. I think what we could do here is just go in after we hit Command Shift I to preview that area, or select that area. If I hit E on my keyboard for the eraser, I'm going to go up in my adjustment, or my command bar, control bar, command bar. I'm going to adjust the size of my brush, because last time I used it, I used a soft brush. I'm going to change that hardness, go all the way up. Okay, and now what you should see is this big circle revealing the brush tip. Now if I go with my brackets on the keyboard, you can see the brush tip change. Okay, but now I have the grace of that selected area, so it's going to help refine what's erased and make it nice and clean. So what I'm going to do is go in to the bottom here and just erase parts of that cereal. So it looks as if it's fitting within that cereal piece, or that bowl that we found. Okay. Again, yours may look slightly different based on what you had selected. This side's kind of tricky here. Go all the way up, I don't think. It's really close. All right. Once I'm happy with where I'm at, make sure that you're always hitting Command D to get those dancing lines to go away. And there we go, revealing the cereal inside of the bowl. Could it be cleaner? I think so. Is it really close? I think so. For starters, I think that's a good introductory to how to make a form using presets and adjustments in Photoshop, and how to fit those duplicated randomized pieces or forms into a selected area. So this is it for now. You'll see more quick tutorials in the future. Good luck finishing this up, and we'll see you later.